They use force and torture as a tool of intimidation and achieve this through public stoning and crucifixion. In recent history, pre-industrial Europe witnessed a large number of similar practices to keep public in check and deter any voice raised against power elite. But with the industrialization and enlightenment, voices were raised against such practices in Europe, labeling them as inhumane and against the constitutional rights of human beings. Laws were then drawn up and implemented in the 18th and the 19th century, where public torture was replaced with imprisonment. Pakistan, since its inception in 1947, amongst other, inherited the phenomena of custodial torture and ill treatment, which we are discussing today. Such short democratic stints, military interventions and administrative problems contributed to the lack of reforms that were needed in the society in Pakistan. But however, I am seeing that the awareness against this shameful use of torture has grown over the past few years. There is a long way to go, and the state is doing the torture on international level also. I will give an example: persecution of Muslims in Bosnia and in Herzegovina, tortures of prisoners in Abu Ghraib prisons, inhuman treatment of prisoners in Guantanamo Bay detention camp speaks volume of the journey that lies ahead of us. Such events indicate that the root of the problem has not yet been addressed, and the torture is still going on an international level also. The judiciary of a country is an emblem of justice and equality, as well as custodian of law. In order to protect the people from persecution and from inhumane treatment, it is very important that the people should have a judiciary which is independent and pro-people and not pro-state. As far as Pakistan is concerned, the Supreme Court of Pakistan in the recent past has established a human rights cell. This cell functions under the supervision of the Chief Justice of Pakistan, and it aims to expedite the matters relating to torture, ill treatment of people and forced disappearances, which is very common again in Pakistan. Establishment this cell has been hailed by the civil societies, and a lot of cases of forced disappearance were unearthed through the Supreme Court of Pakistan, which takes suo motu notice for the violation of human rights, for the violation of fundamental rights under Article 184 of the Constitution. Now, most developing countries, including Pakistan, are currently undergoing a democratic and social transition. What we witnessed and what we heard yesterday and even today, it is very apparent that the policing and the security structure is prone to influence by powerful vested interest groups in society. These groups have tendency to influence and prevail upon policing system for their own interest and benefit. They are using policing and security infrastructure to keep common people under subjugation and maintain circumstances that suits them best. Such circumstances, coupled with the lack of political attention towards the matter, have so far prevented any reformation in the policing and the security structures in the developing countries. Now, I would also like to point out that the use of torture on the pretext of national security and terrorism is being done by several modern states also. These states operate detention and interrogation centers in territories and countries where jurisdiction of their own courts does not apply, and Guantanamo Bay is one of those instances. Torture and ill treatment continues to prevail over there, which is against the United Nations Convention against Torture, but everyone is silent over there. According to the Pakistani Constitution, Article 14, Clause 2 of the Constitution prohibits torture for the purpose of extracting evidence. Article 9 of the Constitution states that no person shall be deprived of life or liberty save in accordance with law. Article 10 of the Constitution provides safeguards against arrest and detentions. Pakistan became a signatory and then ratified the United Nations Convention Against Torture in 2010. But before that, the Constitution provided certain protections through the Constitution. But custodial torture has become a topic of discussion in Pakistan for several years. Problem has persisted because of weak democracy and strong roots in the colonial legacy. Problem has worsened further because of long undemocratic spells and influence of vested interests of segment of society. These circumstances have prevented not only implementation of constitutional rights, but have also prevented reformation to existing legislation such as Pakistan Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. Under section 237 of the Pakistan Penal Code, it deals with hurt, but it does not define torture as such. 337, it defines hurt, but it does not define torture as such. So keeping all this thing in mind, when I came over here last time, and I was, Mr. Naveed impressed upon me that we should bring in a bill for ill treatment and for custodial torture and ill treatment and the punishment for that. And he kept on persuading me. I'm grateful to Naveed. And keeping that thing in mind, we drafted out a bill. I really worked hard on it in order to make the bill palatable as far as Pakistan is concerned, and it should be passed as such. I'll tell you what are the salient features. The salient features is we have defined torture in detail. It includes sexual violence also against women. And the trial would take place before a session judge. In the hierarchy in the subordinate judiciary, session judge is the highest judge, and then there is a high court judge. And we have laid down that there should be an independent crime control agency which would not have anything to do with the present police, and no one from the police would be appointed in this crime control agency, and it should be appointed in a totally transparent manner in a separate way. There will be independent medical practitioners who would be working under the crime control agency for the purpose of examining the victim to ascertain the torture or the ill treatment that has been done or the death that has taken place. There are special prosecutors to represent the state, and these special prosecutors are headed by a chairman who is a retired judge of the High Court, and there is a deputy chairman who is a retired session judge, and there is a prosecutor general who is qualified to be a judge of the High Court. This means he must have at least 10 years practice as an advocate of the High Court. Now all these things would show that the crime control agency and the prosecution agency would be totally independent. The government would not have any say to it, and the punishments are severe. The offence is non-compoundable, the offence is non-bailable, and the bail would be granted in accordance with the provisions of the Criminal Procedure Code, which has been made applicable. Where the special law is silent, then the general law as far as the Criminal Procedure Code would become applicable as such. There is a section and a clause with regard to the protection of the complainant and the punishment for the purpose who hampers investigation. Like a person has been ill-treated in a police station, and the victim has filed a complaint before a session judge, and the session judge has started the prosecution. Now this police officer, being a very influential person, will try to hamper the investigating process or threaten the complainant to withdraw the case, which is non-compoundable. It cannot take place. Now any person who does that is liable to imprisonment, and a trial of its own would take place against the person who hampers the investigation as such. and there's a punishment for those persons also. And another thing which I have put is I made abscondence as a crime. Like let us say a police officer who has committed the torture are responsible for the death, and he absconds, and they give a report, the man is not found. That has become a crime. That has become a crime, and he will be liable to imprisonment, and if he absconds and does not appear before the court, despite the service being affected upon him through the normal procedures. And another thing which we added is a punishment for contempt of court. Anyone who commits contempt would be punished, because you have got to respect the court and follow the law as such. This is the bill that I have introduced in the Senate of Pakistan, and I hope in the next session of the Senate, by the end of this month, if the Senate session is coming up, the bill would be laid down before the House, and most probably it would be sent to the concerned standing committee either on law or on human rights. The standing committee is like a mini parliament. They will clause by clause go through the law. They have got a right to amend. They have got a right to make changes. And that committee, all political parties are represented of Pakistan. So once it is passed by the committee, when it comes to the House, it will have a smooth sailing. Once it is passed by the Senate, then it will go before the National Assembly, the lower house, and as Mr. Fatiana said yesterday, once it's passed from the Senate, it will be again have a smooth sailing. Once it's passed from the National Assembly, it will go to the President of Pakistan for assent, and then the bill becomes an act of the Parliament. We hope we will have some difficulty, like we had the difficulty in the passage of the Act of Harassment Against Women in Workplace, which is one of the unique laws which Pakistan passed. When I was the Minister for Law and Justice, I drafted out the law myself, along with the concerned NGOs, because the women were being harassed at the workplaces by the men, by the superiors, and the religious parties were against this law. But anyhow, we did a lot of lobbying, and I did it myself, being the minister and then the chairman also, that the law must pass, and the law was passed. And the women are feeling very safe now. They hold their own seminars. They're educating all the women who are working in the government institutions or in the private institutions. And there's so many, and we have, under the law, we have got an ombudsman who looks after the whole affair as the law is concerned. And the federal ombudsman for the protection of women is a retired judge. She's a woman herself, and she's a retired judge of the High Court. And in all the 4 provinces, the provincial ombudsmen have been appointed. And if there is any complaint of harassment against women, then those people are liable to prosecution. So in the same way, I hope we will be able to pass this law, and it will be a great achievement. And I'm grateful to Mr. Basil, Mr. Pijo, and Naveed, and others of the AHRC to really motivate me to draft out this law, which would be acceptable in Pakistan and passed as such. And if it is passed, I think it would be a great achievement, and for which I'm grateful to the entire staff of AHRC as such. Now again, there are so many problems with regard to the torture as such. I think what we have got to emphasize is the committees of the Parliament can play a very important role, especially the Human Rights Committee. And I would request the members of the AHRC that they should lobby with the members of the Senate, with the members of the National Assembly later on, and especially the members of the committee before whom this law would go, so that the passage can be smooth and unnecessary hindrances and obstacles are not created. Like every party has got a parliamentary leader in the Senate and a parliamentary leader in the National Assembly. What I would suggest and advise is that the members of the AHRC in Pakistan should approach those the parliamentary leaders of the party, so that when it comes to the House, it should go to the standing committee with the direction that the report should come back within a period of 1 month. But otherwise, if it will go, it will just go and lie over there. If such a direction is given by the chairman of the Senate, that I'm referring this bill to the committee with the direction that the bill should be sent back to the House within 1 month or 2 months, then it will be very good. It will have a quick passage. And for such a direction, I would request that the parliamentary leaders of the political parties in the Senate must be approached and lobbied, and that's very, very important. And I'll myself speak to the chairman of the Senate also for such a direction. He's from our party, Pakistan People's Party. He's a fine man. He's himself a lawyer by profession, and hopefully I'll be able to convince him. But it is very important that we take all the political parties along with us, because that would have a very smooth sailing. Especially MQM, the party which is based in Karachi in the province of Sindh, would be really interested, and other political parties also, because till date the persecution of the political workers is going on by the present government, which was not in our days when our party was in power. But I've been hearing complaints from various political workers of our party and other parties that they're being arrested in fabricated cases, and that they're tortured over there so that they should become accomplices to give evidence against the higher-ups of the party as such. Now, so the parliament has got to lead from the front. It is very important, and they should try to pass laws. They should try to pass laws which are beneficial, which are against ill treatment, against torture, against the humanity as such. And for that, I would request all the parliamentarians, whether from Pakistan or anywhere, should go as such. Now, a lot of discussion is being taking place with regard to the see, in Pakistan the situation is very different. You see, we over in Pakistan, our biggest problem today is the militants, the Talibans, who are working under the cloak of religion, under the garb of religion, in order to achieve their own nefarious ends. As a consequence whereof, in order to fight these terrorists, in order to fight these militants, so-called Islamic militants, we have more than 5,000 security personnel have lost their lives, and thousands of other innocent people have lost their lives. They have attacked mosques, they have attacked churches, they have attacked temples, they have attacked funerals, everywhere. They have shopping centers, and it is still going on. And they have even killed a lot of police officers also. So the torture which is taking place in Pakistan is the police officers torture these people also, and they kill the police officers. I'll give you a recent example. Now this is a newspaper of Karachi of 6th of October. Now what does it say? The police killed 7 militants behind Chaudhry Aslam attack. Chaudhry Aslam was a police officer, a very brave police officer, and who was responsible for the arrests of many militants, and they killed him through a bomb blast. His car was going, and the bomb blast took place, and he was killed with other police officers. And very interesting headline is 4 alleged criminals lynched by mobs. The mob is also killing these criminals now. So the torture is taking place in the police stations. Sometimes it is state sponsored for the reason that the politicians want to control and subjugate the people, or some rich man wants to do something against his opponent, which is taking place in all the countries of Pakistan, but in all the countries of Asia, the developing countries. But in Pakistan there is a different phenomena. The phenomena is of the militants, the Talibans. See that the death, the killing of Daniel Pearl, you would remember, done by the militant, and the police he is captured, but his trial cannot take place because they threaten the judges. No one who has been arrested for terrorism in Pakistan has been convicted till date. the judges don't proceed with the matter, and one person who was convicted, who killed our governor of Punjab, Mr. Salman Taseer, because he said he's not a good Muslim, and he killed him, and he was his guard. And you won't believe it, and his case is pending and no judge is willing to, because when he was convicted by the terrorist court judge, he had to leave the country. He had to leave the country and take asylum because the militants, Islamic militants, threatened to kill him. His appeal is pending and no judge is proceeding with the matter. Same with the Daniel Pearl, our Minister for Minorities, Bhatti, he got killed by the Islamic militants. So in our country the situation is totally different. We are working under the threat, we are living under the threat of these militants, and as a consequence whereof state-sponsored torture takes place. When the state-sponsored torture takes place, the individual torture takes place by the police in order to extract money from the public at large. Now the situation has become so confused, like we have been discussing. We have been discussing now what is the root problem. I'm again getting confused myself. What is the root problem over here? Whether the root problem is corruption, whether the root problem is whether the root problem is the corruption in judiciary, in police, in the ministers and the parliamentarians, or whether the root problem is the defective electoral laws, whether the root problem is the non-implementation of the existing laws. What I feel is the crux. We can discuss this torture. This torture can go on. You cannot stop it. Whether it is state-sponsored, whether it is individual-sponsored, you can make laws. Still, you would not be able to stop the wrongdoings, because these wrongdoings are even going on at the international level, as I've just given examples, Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib prisons. Now, what we really need is, what I feel is, I may be wrong, but what we really is, we need honest and people-loving parliamentarians. Until unless we have got honest and people-loving parliamentarians, we cannot change the system. We cannot finish off torture. The way it has been finished off in Europe, the way it has been finished off in the United States, the police brutalities are still there, but not to that extent the way it is in Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Myanmar, Burma. In order to that, the parliamentarians have to play an effective role. We need an honest and people-loving parliamentarian. How do we get that? Mahi has a problem. He said, how do we get that? Two political parties, they one scratch the back, the other comes into power, second time the other, same in Pakistan. The third force comes in, he says, it's all corrupt, the system is bad. But people say, how would you solve the problem? As you have rightly said, how do you solve the problem? Do you have a magic wand? No. Can you overnight change people? No. The crux again lies when a parliament is full of people who are honest and people-loving. When they are honest and people-loving, then the change can take place. One man cannot change. It is a group of people in the parliament. The government, now what the government does not want. See, for this you need electoral laws, electoral reforms, a fair and transparent election. When a fair and transparent election would take place according to the population census, like in Pakistan, population census has not taken place since many years. Only in 1998 there was housing census, and on the basis of housing census, they said this is the population of Pakistan. Nobody wants the population census to take place because they have registered voters at 3 to 4 places, and that would go away. So we are trying to bring in, the computerized national identity card. So many reforms are being done, but ultimate is electoral laws, which would see to it, and the election commission, which would see to it, and the people in elections commission, that a fair and a transparent election takes place. When a fair and a transparent election takes place, the people, the political parties or the politicians who have remained in the past and have done nothing but made money would not get elected. But people have become wise. The world has shrunk. because of the electronic media. Now you sit in your drawing room and you can watch the war which is going on in Iraq. You can watch what is going on in Syria, what is ISIS doing. The question is this, and no government, the problem is no government and not even the opposition parties wants to have good electoral laws. They do not want an honest and transparent election commission. Why? The question is why? Because they feel if I come into power tomorrow, then I would not be able to do the wrongdoings. And because of the good electoral laws, maybe I would not come into power. So let those flaws remain over there. Let those flaws remain over there. Let those archaic laws remain over there. And if they remain over there, I will circumvent those laws, I will misuse those laws, and I will come to power. When I will come to power, I will subjugate the people and make money. Make money at the cost of the people of the country. The people of the country knows, they are aware of this fact, what these parliamentarians are doing, but they are helpless. They are helpless because when they choose under this defective system. So until unless there is a check and balance in every system, especially reforming the electoral laws which would bring in honest and people with integrity, I do not see any change taking place at all. See, in Pakistan there are forced disappearances, missing persons cases, Supreme Court have taken up. Disappearances are taking place of many reasons. One is state sponsored, because those people are, they're criminals, they're terrorists. And the police or the enforcement agencies, law enforcement agencies know if we take them to the court, there will be no trial. The man would not be punished. Nobody is willing to come and give evidence, as a consequence whereof he will be acquitted. And this is happening. We passed a law in 2012 when I was the law minister, Fair Trial Act. We passed the law Fair Trial Act where we have, in order to see to it that these militants, these terrorists must get convicted, we have made the electronic devices and the evidence collected as such as admissible evidence. You don't have to come the evidence in person. If you bring those things, it would be admissible and those terrorists would be convicted. But it's a long way to go. And we have got a problem. You see, lawyers get kidnapped. The lawyers who prosecute the terrorists, they get kidnapped. Their children get kidnapped. Recently, one of our Addition Advocate General's son, he was a lawyer, he got kidnapped. Nobody knows where he has gone. Some says the security agencies have taken him away. Some says the militants organizations have taken away. So people are so scared that they do not want to talk, they are scared to talk against these militants. Because these militants have got money, they have got the weapons, they have got the means, they can kidnap people, they can kill people. So this is another form of terrorism or torture which has started in Pakistan because of the militants, and it is very difficult to control them as such. So keeping all these things in mind, now I'll give you another heading. Now you'll see the offensive will this is again a newspaper about 2 days back. Offensive will continue in winter. Official says terrorists are on the run and the military cannot give them a chance to regroup. The military is bombing those people in South Waziristan and North Waziristan. Thousands of displaced persons have come into the cities. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to look after them. My friend from Sri Lanka said the refugees have come from Pakistan. See, right, there is again a Shia-Sunni divide in Pakistan. Like the Sunnis, again those militant Sunnis, which are creating ISIS also. The Americans backed them at one time. The Americans brought in jihadis in Afghanistan. Americans went away and we are left with those jihadis. Recently what happened? You would not believe it. Thousands of terrorists were captured. They were put in a prison in Nowshera. They attacked the jail with mortars, machine guns, rocket launchers, and all those terrorists who were arrested were freed and taken away. And the security could not do anything. Sometimes the security is also mixed up with them, because there are grey areas. There are fundamentalist Islamists in the security area also. This is the reason the governor got killed. This was the reason the minister got killed, because the security is, so it's a hodgepodge over there. It's a terrorism, it's torture, and the only way to solve the problem is that we have to bring in the parliamentarians who are not fundamentalists, number one, the parliamentarians who are honest, who are people loving, at least as Pakistan is concerned. If we take away the but generally I would say that it has got to be friendly loving parliamentarians, and they should make laws which are friendly and beneficial to the people of the country.